Anyways, we've returned.
Yes.
Months later, and like I said earlier, we just happened to be wearing the same clothes.
Yeah, like exact same. We didn't age.
Laundry day was yesterday.
Yeah. That's why we're wearing the same clothes.
That's right.
They're fresh.
So,
Favorite outfits. That's what it is.
Oh yeah, no continuity errors here.
I don't have a sandwich this time, so we can't have any continuity errors.
Maybe.
I guess today we wanted to talk about the Marvel movies and
Yeah, Marvel, DC.
maybe a little bit of DC too.
Yeah.
DC.
Mostly DC.
Mostly DC?
Yeah, mostly DC.
I don't know. Marvel
Yeah.
does way better than movies.
Depends on what you think is better. I mean, movies designed for people that are brain dead or children, Marvel.
Yeah,
People that have been bludgeoned by a shovel.
Yeah, there you
That's
go.
why Greg loves them. Producer Greg, sorry.
Executive producer.
Yeah, you're right, because I found that the Marvel movies have more of like a candy like atmosphere, like
Yeah,
bright
I call it-
colors.
Yeah.
I call it popcorn bubblegum. It's
Yes.
it's like, for short attention spans and something you're going to just use for a short period and then throw away. It's that's not to say that they're not filmed in a superior way to the DC ones, or that they're not fleshed out plot-wise better. I just generally find most of the DC stuff that I'm into have better storylines, whether or not they've been told properly on screen or not is a different story.
They're trying to make it more family-friendly all around, which I understand.
Yeah,
that.
but
the
I mean,
comic book
like-
stuff gets a lot darker.
We don't actually need movies. Shouldn't feel the need to be literally something that everybody on the planet is going to go see.
Well, no.
I miss the days of like when 5 movies were playing in a theater. That's 5 different movies targeted at 5 different audiences, so
Right.
you could have selection. Now, almost every movie is trying to kind of tailor itself to be lowest common denominator and get as many people to that ticket as possible.
In the seats as possible.
Yeah.
But see,
Oh,
what
yeah.
I like about it is that, like, I'm in my 30s. I enjoy still going to go see all this stuff. I've always loved comic books and stuff, and I get to share it with my kid now. But she's too young to take to some of the stuff just because of violence and rating. They won't let her in. Right? It's not my choice. It's theirs.
Do you think in 10 years, since I think the generation that is in the 25-31 range right now is the perfect demographic to be targeting these at, because
Well, that would be me exactly.
exactly. So do you think when maybe this demographic gets a little older, these movies will kind of go down in
Yeah, well,
popularity?
I think Marvel's been building their universe
Yeah.
for 10 years, right?
Yeah.
So
There's the cat.
if the genre kind of the superhero dominating the theater
Yeah.
continues at this point. Hello, Snowball.
I
You want to
wasn't
be
pre-
on camera?
I wasn't prepared for the cat.
She's like,
Giant white cat.
I go wherever I want. I mean, 10 years is a long time for a singular theme to basically be what is dominating the
Yeah.
entirety of the theaters, right?
Yeah.
She's probably confused why there's a sofa in the middle.
Strange people.
Because if you think about it, like normally, have you ever noticed that, one company releases a horror movie, another one of the big studios, and they're similar themed or whatever?
Yeah.
That used to happen to tend a lot because people were riding trends. That's why
Yes.
everybody's doing superhero now, or the studios that have superhero properties, right? But eventually that has to burn out. I mean,
They're gonna run
another
out of
superhero
doors.
movie and another superhero movie. So I think the test will be here. These Avengers that are well loved and well liked over the last 10 years, when they retire, because they will.
They have
Chris
to.
Evans is gone.
Yeah.
Yep.
I guess we'd say it in names. Captain America's gone,
Yeah.
as this Captain America. Iron Man is gone.
I think Chris Hemsworth.
Thor is gone. Like most of the major ones, I think have all confirmed that they're not continuing on at this point.
Well, and in the comics, the people who actually played those characters change as well, so it just makes
Yeah,
sense.
so they could continue it forward, but I think that's since they're aiming the Marvel movies at the audience that is perhaps less nerdy, like they're familiar with comics and superheroes, but not like super into it.
Yeah.
That I don't think they're going to do that. I think what you're going to see is they've definitely positioned Captain Marvel to be the leader of, for lack of better, the new Avengers, right? Whichever Avengers offshoot they end up going with, I think you're going to see Captain Marvel lead that because they wouldn't put so much money behind being this is the next big thing. And also, if you look where they timed its release, I don't think that was a mistake.
They hyped that
Right
up.
as they're about to kill the Avengers off
Yeah.
as a franchise, they're bringing her out. They brought Black Panther out, which is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know who else really. I guess Ant-Man could continue on because he's not really had a solid role in it. Spider-Man just kind of joined into it, so maybe he could go forward with it, right? And now they own Fox. You could have Deadpool because Deadpool's temporarily. Whoops! I can feel a cat. Hello.
Man, you know what? Going back a couple years, I was flabbergasted at how they just couldn't get Spider-Man right.
I know.
No.
Like
Well,
they couldn't get it off the
it's
ground, and
disturbing.
they like fist fucked that movie into just getting it right. You know what I mean?
I think it
They were
goes-
like, we have to make this.
It goes back to how movies target audiences, right? So, I think whether it could have been done a year before, 5 years before, Marvel quote unquote getting it right was a matter of the audience that was old enough now to have been young enough to appreciate comics the way comics are, versus the way they were trying to make the old Spider-Man movies. Like what you're trying to do is like get your mom to watch
Come and
Spider-Man.
And my mom
My mom
loved
hated-
that movie.
no.
That's the funny
Right?
thing.
My mom
She
hated
did.
it.
Yeah, but that's what I mean.
That
Like they
scene
were,
where he came
maybe
down
not
and
literally
kissed
your
her.
mom, but the idea is like they were trying to get the moms and dads and the people that they're spending money to take their kids to
Yeah.
movies. They're trying to get them to go, and that generation perhaps was not as well versed in comicology as we are now, and as the generations that are going to see it. So could it have happened a couple years earlier for Sony and do the Spider-Man ones?
Yeah.
Probably, but also I think Carnage is a good example of how Sony wants to capitalize on the superhero buzz that's now the theatrical blockbusters, but at the same time they still want it to be their own flavor of movie, because I think there's a certain subset of the crowd, like the really hardcore comic fans, did not like Carnage,
Oh yeah.
right? Because of how much it diverted. But at the same time, like Sony, I mean, there's lots of weird stuff like licensing and whatnot, the issues they have. So there were certain things they had to shoehorn in. They didn't have the time to make it a lead up like 5 Marvel movies and an Avengers thing. And I think this is part of the reason that everybody was upset, is that it was PG instead of R-rated.
It needs
for
to
Carnage.
be dark.
But here's the
Yes.
problem. So apparently in their contract for owning Spider-Man, if they can't do... Marvel still has some oversight, right?
Yeah.
And they can't put Spider-Man into R-rated movies, right?
Right.
So while they don't have the same restrictions on Carnage, if they want Carnage and Spider-Man to exist in the same universe so that they can have a crossover, Carnage has to remain PG as well. So this sets up, I feel like this movie, because if you look at the way they show the spoiler at the end there for Carnage, or for Carnage, sorry. Yeah, I've been saying Carnage all the time. Venom, I meant, so where's the movie? Carnage is the one we're leading into.
They made a Carnage movie and they didn't tell
I'm
anybody.
like, I thought it was just a Venom one,
Yeah,
but
sorry.
maybe
But
I missed
the reason I've been
something.
saying Carnage story is because that's what I think they're leading into, possibly one of the storyline arcs where it's Spider-Man and Venom versus Carnage.
Which is the arc.
Which is which is what I meant
That
by
would be
I keep saying Carnage, and I
Yeah.
think Venom the
That's what I
movie
can't wait for.
was the way it is,
Cool.
so they could bring Carnage in and have a Venom and Spider-Man versus. If they kept it R-rated, sure, then they could have just done Venom only versus Carnage only.
Yeah.
But I think that, again, going back to they're too busy selling tickets to as many people as possible at once. So what's a greater audience? Kids and parents having Spider-Man and Venom and Carnage on
Or
the
just
screen?
25-year-old people. That's
Yeah,
it.
or just people that are 18 plus, don't
Yeah.
need adult accompaniment, can go see this movie, right? So,
But the heart of Carnage for me is not a like family subject matter
Oh.
to me. So I don't know how they're gonna like metamorphosize Carnage into being PG.
Well, see, what really bothers me is I remember when we were kids, if our parents wanted to take us to an R-rated movie, if they were our parent, they could take us in. It was up to our parents to make the call.
Yeah.
I thought the same thing when I was going to take my kid to see Wolverine. She wanted to see X-23 so badly. It's all she wanted.
Yeah.
And they're like, nope, she's too young.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
we know that kids went in last week. No, it doesn't matter. She's too young. I'm her mother. I'm saying it's okay.
Yeah.
Nope, doesn't matter.
funny story.
Can I just hold on 1 second? So, okay, you don't want to.
What?
Oh, I thought you said it. I didn't realize it was going on. You're
Yeah,
not
no, I
interrupting.
didn't. I just came in to say hi because it's my birthday and I thought I would.
Oh, hey, Angela. I can hear your voice from here. Happy birthday.
Hi, thank you.
So what were we talking about?
Sorry, some interrupted you.
PGs.
Oh,
and
right.
movies.
I always-
Talking about taking her daughter to it couldn't be admitted
Yeah.
into.
That's
but
the
I was
only
going to
reason I
say,
care about the PG ratings, period. Otherwise, I like the fact that they're darker.
I think that there should be. I mean, Marvel's tried it with their comics, and it does fail because the problem is that everybody expects every movie to be AAA quality.
Yeah.
I think that is what's leading to this. If there was a Marvel Junior universe, so that you could take your daughter to those things that are all PG, then we could all have our Marvel R-rated universe,
Yeah.
and we could go to that stuff as well, right? But the problem is, they have to make a movie that not only you want to go see, but you can go see and want to see with your daughter.
See, the way
So Wreck-It Ralph?
Yeah.
You have to make Marvel Wreck-It Ralph,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Because that Wreck-It Ralph Wrecks the Internet was awesome.
Well, they make
That
a
movie
lot
was
of
awesome.
great, actually,
Yeah.
Avenger cartoons and stuff like that. I
Yeah.
don't know why they don't make like feature films and
Because
put those in
it's-
the theaters for the kids.
You can't spend that kind of money. I mean, you can't spend $300 million making a kids movie and hoping that you're going to sell enough tickets because, as I think it's Kevin O'Leary, it says, there's one problem with kids. They don't have credit cards. And so
Yeah.
kids don't have their own money. So you can't, how do you get a child to show up to something? Or, as a parent, how do you get a child to buy something? You get them to nag the literal crap out of their
Yeah.
parents
And most-
until their parents cave.
Yeah,
the
and that happens a
the,
lot.
The parents are never going to be like, well, I think I get what you're saying, where the parents are in their head, they're like, well, I don't want to see this movie. I don't want to take my kid
Yeah.
to see this. And
I wouldn't want to see a Marvel Junior thing unless I had a child and I was like, all right, I want to introduce my kid to this
Yeah.
universe. I want them to be part.
Oh, that's just it. You want a way to be able to introduce your child.
The
Yeah.
Lego movie was
That's
that
what
for
I mean.
me.
Yeah.
Like the Lego movie was that for me. Is I really like those movies.
Yeah. I think if
They're not
people,
bad.
so the Lego movie is an interesting one. It was a big budget movie that attracted all ages. I think as far as like having a Marvel Junior or a DC Junior universe, which are the cartoons for the most part, right?
Yeah.
I think if moviegoers if they weren't so focused on like this ultra high production quality, if people weren't so picky, like everything has to be AAA or it gets 40% on Rotten Tomatoes. Like we
Yeah.
live in a society where people won't accept anything other than
The
perfection.
best. Yeah.
So
But yeah,
that's
we
the
still go back and
problem.
watch
So
retro movies.
if Marvel could say spend $50 million, $100 million making a kids Marvel movie, and it looked more akin to like a TV show,
Yeah.
and people went to it and they could make their money back, they would be encouraged to do it again. But the problem is, they do that kind of thing, or if they do that kind of thing, people don't pay attention. So they do it with their comics.
Yeah.
And I've had parents that have been into it, like, oh, you should get you get Spider-Man, you should subscribe to, or you get Avengers, you should subscribe to like the kid version of it for the comics. Like, nah, I don't want to waste my money on that. They can read mine or whatever, right? So it's like, it's tough to pull people to spend money on their kids. The kids, you can't. It's really hard for you to advertise to parents why they should buy something for the kids unless it's education or health related, something that's going to make the child's life better, which you recognize as an adult. But as far as entertainment value, you have to advertise to the child to a level that the child just instinctively just
Walks to work.
just wants this thing. Just
Yeah.
doesn't understand why, just wants this thing because they'll nag their parents until their parents buy it. It's unfortunate we live in that society, but
It's probably because I was a child that way myself, where I didn't get to have all that stuff.
Yeah.
That for my own kid, it's like, yep, if there's a kid's version,
But
great.
I was always drawn to these types of things as a kid because they were badass.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh,
you
for me,
can't.
it was
I
just
feel like
what
you
was
can't
there.
have that badass modus operandi and dumb it down. Not dumb it down. I shouldn't, because kids aren't dumb.
Yeah.
No.
Kids are really smart. But
But they have
to
taken down the quality
water
of
it
shows.
down.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have to
like the
That's
kids
what
are
it
gonna be
is.
like, oh, Wolverine doesn't have claws in the kids' version.
Well, like I said, my kid
This
wanted to
is
see
lame.
X-23. She's one of the bloodiest characters around.
Yeah.
And she was like 5 or 6.
But I get
at
where
the
you're
time.
saying that,
Yeah,
like,
and Logan.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that was a good movie.
Yeah,
oh yeah,
they-
what I was
they-
going to say
She
earlier
got
about
so mad she bawled her eyes out at the theater because they wouldn't let her in.
what I was going to say earlier about Alex saying that she couldn't take her daughter
Yeah.
to. We went to see. Doesn't matter. We went to see something. Yeah, the Lackey Zach. We'll call him Lackey Zach. Lackey Zach.
Black Zach, Black
A friend of mine came down from the city and we were doing some renovations, and it was a Sunday, and he's like, let's go to a movie after. I was like, cool, man, let's go. And we're like, we'll take Lackey Zach, and somebody else went with us, I think. So we went into the theater, and it was like an R-rated movie. No, it wasn't R-rated, but whatever, it doesn't matter.
it was
So
X-rated.
yeah, it was something you could get kids into. So I
Yeah.
guess it wasn't R-rated,
Probably
but
PG.
18A, I think it was, or whatever,
Oh,
right?
okay.
So we walked in, and I saw one of like the ushers or whatever you would call them, right? And I was like, "Hey, Sean, what's up?" He's like, "Yeah, no, man, what do you guys want to see a movie?" Yeah, yeah. I was like, "Do you think Lackey Zach here could pass for a children's ticket?" And he looks over and goes, "Yeah, sure." So we get up to the counter, and my buddy Josh's like, "You're not buying a children's ticket for Zach." I'm like, "Why? It's 18A. It's adult accompaniment. He can come with us." So
What movie was it?
I don't remember.
Kingsman.
Oh, it was Kingsman.
Nice.
Kingsman was 18A?
It was something like that. Yeah.
It's pretty bloody, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
Or the swearing.
The
maybe.
first one was, there was a lot of violence, but I didn't find it
Yeah,
particularly.
maybe it was Kingsman.
Yeah,
I
but
don't
like I
remember
said,
particularly.
they've watered things down for kids a lot. They've baby-proofed them.
No, man,
so
kids,
ridiculously.
kids need darkness.
They do.
They do.
Otherwise, when
We
they
could have
grow
read
up,
the sign wrong as we walked in too, right? Because the whole joke was like
It's an
having
81A.
to make a 24-year-old pretend he's a 14-year-old, and then say where his adult accompaniment. So
It's just 81A. Only people 81 years old and over can go in. It's just a Romoli demonstration.
Yeah, though they have to generalize a lot of the movies and how they're formatted nowadays, just so that families, of all stretches and walks of life, can just like come into the theater.
But
and sit
I
down.
think
they just need to teach kids to deal with the violence.
I mean, yeah.
I think where the line's drawn is like the demographic for these movies it's a big demographic. It's like 14 to like 40.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it is because I know Greg, the producer, this is how he bonds with his kids.
Yeah.
Is he takes them to these movies. And like I don't have any kids myself, but I asked
The lazy parenting we're talking about now.
No, we took him out to the drive-in quite a bit and made huge nights out of it. Like, it was a great thing.
Well, the one movie for me where my parents were like, I think it's okay, was Jurassic Park when I was a kid. And
That explains so much.
Oh no, my kids seen way worse at a very young age. Like, I'm not worried about that stuff.
but
whatsoever.
that movie was terrifying, but it wasn't
I've never
traumatizing.
actually seen it.
What?
I have a very large
What?
thing. If
I
a
actually
movie
hid
gets
behind the
hyped for
couch.
anything other than being a good movie, so if you're spinning it based on effects or some kind of social justice cause or whatever, I just
Yeah.
avoid spending my money on the ticket. I'll see it later in the olden days on VHS or DVD,
Well, we
right?
would have been young. Like, I was probably
93 that came out, right?
Yeah, I don't
so
wanna be-
I was 5, and I remember hiding behind the couch in terror. I wanted the scenes.
Yeah, I don't want to. I want to be sold a movie because it has good acting, all those kinds of things in it. I don't want to be sold it because
So nothing the Marvel
some
movies
kind of
have.
yeah, basically, right? If you're trying to push some kind of social agenda or whatever, that's not a movie I want to pay for.
Yeah.
So because I think movies are supposed to be documentaries, different story. Movies are supposed to be escapism for people. So I just have an issue when it gets pushed too heavily to be political or to be socially justicey and that kind
But
of stuff.
you liked Black Panther, didn't you? Didn't you find that movie was...
I did have some issues with
Yeah.
that, like calling every time you see a white person, they're the what were they called, colonizers and stuff like that,
Yeah.
right? I find
That's
that.
right.
I'm not gonna say I find that offensive. I just find that a little bit off. I don't know that you could say that kind of comment directly, derogatorily against any
But
other
they-
race. Not
they-
that should you,
I
not you
think they
should
just meant it
either.
towards
But
anyone who wasn't Wakandan in the movie, but it just seemed.
They
Like, it
wanted
was
you to
definitely
talk about
phrased.
that when you came out of there, though.
yeah,
They
understood.
wanted you to.
Yep.
So, was that... I don't know if it's like that in the comic book.
I haven't.
didn't read
I've.
that comic.
That's definitely one of the ones where I was like, I buy it because of the covers,
Yeah.
and I flip through it because I'm not reading the story for any particular reason. I just think the character's really cool. Like what I liked about Black Panther is, to me, he always felt like the better of Tony Stark. He's the rich guy with the super suit,
But he's noble, too.
but he's also noble,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Whereas Tony Stark is basically. I don't want to say he's not a noble character, but he really only cares about what his perception of
Or
right
his
or wrong
agenda.
is.
Like, he'll help you out if it
Yeah.
helps him out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas, like you can see it in Black Panther the movie, T'Challa literally pushes his people to open their borders and help the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas if that were like reversed and it was Tony Stark, I think his character would be like, nah, we're fine without all these other people
Well,
coming
I'm
in.
doing
Look
okay.
at how he is with the Stark technology, anyways, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't want people to get hands on it because too many people abused it.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
he would just shut down everything. He would definitely not let the Wakandans share their technology.
Yeah, it's yeah. So, but I mean that movie was close to walking that line for me. But
But
my
you
favorite
stuck
Marvel
through
was-
it.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
it wasn't a bad movie, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little preachy, like on the subject, but
Yeah. There's
Movies, you
parts
know
of
what?
it.
Movies are going to do that more and more now, I think. Like they're pushing for
subliminal messaging.
they're isolating certain messages rather than movies like a movie like, let me think back, The Shining. There was no sort of social message there.
that's what I mean.
It's
Like
just
movies,
a crazy guy.
if you look at some of the best movies in history, there might be there's obviously like a moral to the story kind of
Yeah.
thing, but they're not like in your face pushing which side, one way or the other.
Yes.
So like, if you've ever seen Heat,
I love that movie.
right? That's one of my
That movie was
favorites, right? So like,
fantastic.
who's right and who's wrong in that? Are the cops the good
Or the
guys,
drug dealers. Yeah.
or are the bank robbers?
Was it Frank Roberts?
Yeah. Shame on you for not knowing.
That gunfight at the end, though.
Yep.
One of the best.
Yeah,
One of
I
the
mean,
best.
but they really set you up to be in love with De Niro's character and his crew.
Yeah.
But at the same time, to kind of make you hate a little bit, I think, against Pacino's character.
Yeah.
Right? Because he's kind of the dick cop.
He's
right?
kind of an ass. Yeah.
Yeah, he's definitely an ass, right? So that's like one of my favorite lines that I use on people. That that one scene where he sits down with the informant. Don't waste my motherfucking time, right? You know. So,
I like that scene where they get together in the coffee shop and talk, and you're like, holy
Yeah.
fuck, these two people are actually in a movie together.
yeah,
Because I think that was the first time they were in a movie together.
might have been. I
Um,
think it was big for them both to be in that movie for sure.
But going back to the comic book movies, I think the reason why Greg wanted to have me on is I'm very anti these movies.
Yep.
Because it happened one day where I watched, what was Seth Rogen, Green Hornet or Green Lantern? Seth Rogen?
Oh yeah, sorry, I
Oh,
was thinking
Hornet.
Seth MacFarlane
Yeah,
for a second.
Hornet.
Green
Was
Hornet.
it the Green Hornet?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
watched the preview for that, and in my head I'm like, this looks fucking awful.
It's definitely
And
more of
I-
a comedy than the old Green Hornet that I remember watching, like the old-fashioned show.
And in my head, I'm like, they will fucking slap anything on film and it will make money.
Did you
And
see-
I feel like production values just go right in the shitter because they will slap anything on there to sell it.
They took the two guys from Step Brothers and did Sherlock and Holmes. I'm
Yeah.
disgusted by that.
Yeah. And how many times did they have to make the Fantastic Four? And,
Yeah.
and they didn't get it.
Yeah,
No.
they
Well,
just
yeah,
can't get that
it's-
one right.
That's where Marvel became. I think the formula. Everybody likes to pretend how easy it is, but I think that's the Fantastic Four. Since it's done by Fox,
Yeah.
is a studio that wasn't interested in being particularly in the superhero genre.
But
They wanted to make a movie that had superheroes in it, so it's like trying to be like Die Hard, but just slap some people with superpowers.
They,
in
they
it.
wanted to get in on the money and didn't care about
Yeah.
anything
Just
I,
else.
another
did
action film.
But were they just trying to break even with it, or were they
No, I
just
think
like,
that
we
nobody-
feel obligated to make a superhero?
Nobody does that. In the olden days, they used to. I don't know if this is still true these days. They'd say for every 10 movies released, you'd have one blockbuster. You'd have like 2 or 3 ones that did really well. Then you'd have like 2 or 3 that were break even. Then a few that were a loss.
Yeah.
So you're literally just firing out as many movies as you can
And
because you
pray.
don't really know.
What's going to cut?
Yeah, I mean nowadays we have computers and stuff, so we can very easily predict.
Don't you
Not
think that
very
was
easily, but much more easily predict how well something's going to do. Right?
Don't you
Yeah.
think that was a huge gamble for Fox to do that, though?
I don't think so because I mean, like there've been other movies that have just been people kind of proclaim the greatness as it comes, like in the trailers, and then it hits theaters and it bombs out. So I don't think it's actually unique.
Oh, yeah. I think when they're proclaiming it, the greatness, it's the people who don't know anything at all about the background of the movie. They're just taking it at the movie standpoint. And
Yeah,
it's the
That was
fans.
the first Transformers for me.
Yeah, it's the
Because I was
fans
just
are
like,
this is all wrong.
It's
this isn't
just
canon.
sending so much at your
So I
senses
think
at once.
I think that's a
Yeah.
good example of maybe that's what Fox was trying to do with the Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
They were trying to take it in a different direction other than your traditional comic route, like the traditional comic storylines.
Yeah.
It didn't work for Fantastic Four, arguably. However, if you look at Transformers, it's been nothing but a blockbuster smash since it came out, and it's nothing like Transformers.
But that whole show only started out as an advertisement for a toy line anyways. So it's kind of easy for them to have more fun with it.
Right. But the thing, I agree with you because Transformers, the first one when it came out, like I didn't, you don't get to see an actual Transformer. It's like
Yeah, go from the old 80s
the
cartoon
lens
to
flare.
then
It's
this.
like it's.
Michael Baying it up.
Yeah.
Well, that's a
All
conversation for
explosions
another
and then
day.
bright lights.
Don't
But
forget, there's the the rose-colored goggles effect. Like we look back at what we grew up on quite fondly, but I challenge you to watch critically the original Transformers movie without cringing.
Like
I watched it a lot of times,
like
but
which,
it's bad.
like the animated one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it is a little hard to get through. The first
It's
15,
you know
20
what?
minutes is great.
It's long.
It is.
Yep.
It's long, and you know when the Autobots are in, I don't know if they're in Unicron at the time, and they're that thing is like eating everything.
Yeah.
It's like this movie kind of sucks right now because they're fighting fish Transformers.
Is this the one with the junk?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
those things. Oy.
Yeah,
the
that
little
was.
shark-looking things.
Did they have to fill space? The theme song was awesome. Oh, I will say that theme song was kick-ass.
Yeah.
There is a certain amount of truth to. There's some there's Toys That Made Us on Netflix that kind of covers it. That someone figured out the formula of toys to sell the show as opposed to shows to sell the toys.
Yeah.
So there's a certain amount of truth to the. They were introducing characters in the movie to try to sell toys, right?
Yeah.
So, but there's also the problem of the longer something goes on, we are all guilty of it. like our favorite thing that doesn't change enough then becomes something we become bored of. So look at The Walking Dead, for example, right now. It's a really good spot.
Yeah.
The Walking Dead has more or less been consistent-ish in the way it's done since season 1, and people are dropping like flies on it because the wow factor of being
It's
in it is
going
out.
away.
Yeah.
And they can't, like, the first season you're like, holy crap, I can't believe they killed this character. Well, Game of Thrones and Walking Dead have now proven that you can actually have a successful show where you kill off main characters, you kill off the cast on a regular basis. But the hate I think that Walking Dead's getting right now, people go, oh, it hasn't been good in years. Well, it's the same kind of story, it's the same kind of plot being told still,
You
but
liked
it's
it
not
initially.
changed enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I love
if you look at
it.
Transformers, you look at G.I. Joe, you know, the classics that we would remember growing up on.
It's awful.
Like
Anyway,
so,
sorry.
Transformers, like the Transformers movie is so if you remember the G.I. Joe one, when he's about to die,
Yeah.
he doesn't actually die; he just goes into a coma.
Yeah.
That was changed. He was going to die because they thought that would be a good way to spike interest back in the show. But once the negative reactions to Optimus Prime dying, in
Yeah.
Transformers,
Oh my
they were like,
God.
we have to rewrite this section.
We can't do
I
this.
have never in my life seen backlash like that.
Yeah.
In my life.
Didn't they
And
get,
it
like,
was
death threats and
it
stuff
was
over that?
parents.
It was probably crazy.
It was
stuff.
parents.
I wasn't
Well, the
old
kids
enough
are
to
too little.
recognize that.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, kids
Kids
would
were
have
too
just
little
like
to rate it
I
themselves.
cried like a baby in the theater when he died.
You
I
were
was
like,
5.
what? Yeah, 4 or 5. You weren't very old.
I cried. Oh my god! And you know what made it worse is that they made Hot Rod
Yeah, screw,
like that.
no,
Awful.
screw Hot Rod.
he's like a sissy. Like
Screw
He
that.
is.
it's kind of like you
like
know.
why make an emo
Rodimus
kid
Prime or
car
something.
the
Yeah,
hero?
but he's the
Well,
one
it's
who kills
again,
Optimus,
You
essentially.
can't literally just have a
It's his
second.
fault.
You can't just literally have a second Optimus Prime. So he has to be. His character has to literally be different than Optimus Prime. So Optimus Prime was very much kind of like your, kind of for lack of better words, perhaps like the alpha male leader, very confident, very proud, kind of, and very noble, obviously.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they had to make Hot Rod like a little more insecure and a little bit more emotional.
A little
right?
more Kurt Cobain-y. Sorry.
No, I think he has a little bit more brains than Kurt Cobain. So.
Wow.
Oh,
Not more than the wall behind him.
Yeah.
Oh.
scathing.
Can you cut this part out, please? Because
Oh
what are
my
you just
God.
looking at the
This
cat?
guy can't get out of the bag. And fucking walk.
Cat break.
She snuck into the bag. There you go.
Oh,
She kept trying to back up and walking into that bag, and she couldn't go in first.
I would have fucking
Um,
recorded that. Jesus.
Then, of course, you have
Gives more
the
hits
other
on that
side
than
of it
on
is
us.
the DC movies that are arguably not as hot.
but they're made better.
I think in general the stories. I don't know if I'd say they were made better because you could argue like cinematography and like acting quality and stuff like that. But I think the plots they try to make them. The thing for me I've always seen, I guess, is to step back to comics for the difference between DC and Marvel. DC is more of like a story told about something that happens.
Mm-hmm.
These people also tend to have superpowers, whereas Marvel ones seem a lot more like it's all about the superpowers.
Yeah.
So it's about big, crazy, explosive
Blowing you
scenes
away.
and stuff like.
Yeah.
So like Batman, I think is such a popular
'Cause he has
character
none.
because he's like
Yes.
solving normal. Like when he fights Bane, Bane doesn't really in the movies isn't portrayed as having superpowers. Right, he's just a really strong guy, and the
Yeah.
Joker, all those kinds of things, they aren't generally shown as like they're not Loki. They can't like just
Well, Mr. Freeze though.
There's still technology.
okay. You can't count those ones because those are bad.
With the old ones,
But the
the-
thing is,
the
it's still
Batman
technology, not
Forever?
powers.
Yeah.
It's created.
it looks like a power though.
It
it's
looks like
flashy.
it, but it's created just like the original Spider-Man's weapon was, right?
Oh,
Take
yeah.
two and call me in the morning. It's so stupid.
Yeah,
was
Batman Forever,
very
Batman
cheesy.
Returns, not particularly hot.
I
fans
liked
of that.
Batman Forever. Greg, the producer, always eternally argue about this because
See,
I liked Batman
I liked
Forever.
them, but I was also like a tiny child when they came out, so they were
I was
perfect
too.
for me.
Same with
Yeah,
the
we're
Ninja
not that far
Turtle
apart.
movies. They weren't very good, but I was a kid when they came out.
Yeah, so it's like the nostalgia behind it too.
But I think that also goes to what we're talking about, audience, right? Like
You're cashing in on nostalgia.
camera falling apart. I think it's just the view screen went.
Is it still going to work?
Not the view screen. I
Okay.
think something.
So, I mean, back then movies I think cost a lot less to make.
You think?
Stars cost a lot less to
Yeah.
put on screen. So you could make a Ninja Turtles movie and sell it to
It's
kids
not people weren't
and
as
be okay to
entitled.
do it. Yeah, but like Here's the thing, the interesting argument that I have on a regular basis. People are like, nah, I don't think I'm going to see that. The reviews are said they were bad, or my friend said it was bad. I'm like, but you're interested in this material. Yeah, if the movie's good. I was like, well, you won't know unless you see it. Like, the reason, like, no, very other few things in life do we expect there to literally be, well, I guess we expect, but there aren't, like, one absolute. What is the best fast food? What is the best brand of jeans? What is the best make of car? We all have differences in opinions. But here's something that for $15 or less, you can go double check. And you're going to entertain yourself, better for worse, for that hour to hour and a half, maybe 3 hours if you're lucky it's in a big movie, right?
Have you ever wanted to walk out of a big bang crashy movie? Have you ever wanted
there
to?
are very few. I did fall asleep during... It's the first movie in a long time that was... what was it?
Even though it's bad, it's still
the
kind
one with the hotel. I can't remember it now. It's like they no.
I was gonna say.
They stole the hotel out of basically John Wick and turned it into a movie in like a dystopian future where they're fighting over water.
Okay.
Hotel Artemis.
That was a movie?
Yeah, well, it's not literally, but the idea of that hotel being a neutral place for all bad people,
Right.
that became a movie.
Okay.
And the reason that I had a problem with it is like I'll go see almost any movie that I was like I could sit through this. My problem was they sold that as actiony as John Wick,
Yeah.
and the first 45 minutes are people just sitting around talking, for better or worse.
Ugh.
So by the time the action scenes hit, I was looking at my friend was like, "You're
I'm checked
asleep."
out.
I'm like, "Yeah, it's like I'm checked out on this movie,
Yeah.
right?"
Yeah.
But I've seen a lot of other movies that people would say are quote unquote bad. If the story doesn't completely suck, the acting doesn't completely suck, and I was entertained for that hour and a half, I was looking for something to do for that evening.
Yeah.
Right, so I feel that kind of dollar value it's not expensive. You're not paying $100 to go see a movie, and if it sucks, you're out. So just go see it. Who cares?
Well, not only
If it
that-
ends up being the worst movie you've ever seen,
That's
you
okay.
now know you've seen it, and it's
And
the
you're
worst
out-
movie
and you're
ever.
out $15.
Yeah.
Add it
friend,
to the tally.
and then you have enjoyment in ripping on the damn movie afterwards.
Yeah, and if you look at like a good parallel to that, I think is, or
It's fun to rip on movies if they're bad, dude.
if you look at people the way they
It's
review
hours
like
of entertainment
restaurants,
right there.
Yeah.
people will go try a restaurant.
You have to.
to find out whether it's good or bad, but for some reason, and that's going to be a lot more than $15.
Yeah.
Right, but you people like, oh, I'm not going to go see whatever movie for whatever silly reason. Now, if you have legitimate reasons, like I'm not into superhero movies, okay, well, don't go to a superhero movie. That's probably a bad thing. Or maybe try one, right? Because you've never tried one before because you don't like them. Maybe you end up liking them.
I
Right?
want to be into them, and there are a few that I do like. Like I like the Christopher Nolan Batmans.
Yes.
Yes.
Because the second one was just a crime drama to me.
Yeah.
It was just a crime drama.
So I mean,
that's
I think
really
the-
what Batman is.
Yeah.
The DC
Yeah,
movies.
you're right.
The DC movies that I appreciate at least. I can't say all of them obviously because like there's the modern ones like Christopher Nolan and newer
Yeah.
are they're a lot more about a story. So that's why I really like. People are gonna hate on this, but I liked Man of Steel. It wasn't the
first one?
best one. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that one.
I feel that Superman is one of my favorite characters. Not people latch on to the indestructibility or the superpower of it. I like his character in the traditional sense of Superman in that he is. If you strip away, like there obviously is some early days where it was kind of like Monster of the Week themed, like Superman versus Solomon Grundy. How does Superman save the Earth? One of my favorite cells, and I can't remember what comic it's at or what it's a trade paperback, I think. There is that really typifies why Superman is a good story to me. Why Superman stories are good. There's a kid on the top of a building and he's threatening to jump. He's threatening to kill himself, right?
Yeah.
And the police are at the bottom and they're deploying the bag or whatever, right? And Superman shows up on scene, right? And Superman flies up to the kid and instead of just like, he's Superman, what are you going to do, kid? He could grab him and take him to the ground.
Yeah.
And the kid starts screaming at Superman basically something along the lines, you're just going to be like everybody else, you're going to control my life, you're not going to let me make my decisions, you're just going to stop me here, that's all you're going to do, you're just like them. And he says, wait, I'll make you a deal. If you stand here and you talk to me about your problems, I'm paraphrasing,
How
perhaps
old
it's
was
not that deep.
this? Was this strip?
It's quite a bit old. I don't know exactly when. But so he says to this kid, we stand here, we talk. I'll listen to your problems. You talk to me. And if the end you still think you're going to jump, I'm not going to stop you.
Yeah.
I can't remember if those are exactly the words, but that's the story. That's the emotion that you get from that sequence, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to just, it's just not like laser eyes blasting, right? Heat vision blasting stuff. So, and of course the story ends positively in that by the time, the comic strip is done, the few pages are done and Superman's talked to the kid. And obviously it's
So,
super
but I guess that's us.
the kid no longer wants to go.
I don't know what else
you want to know.